Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video we are going to talk about Elastic Kubernetes service and we are going to deploy a small application. I hope you enjoy it, so let's do it. So for this tutorial we are going to need an Amazon Web Service account, Docker, Kubit Control CLI and a small project. So first of all we need to search ECR in our console to find Elastic Container Registry. We are going to create a new repository right here. A private repository. We need to set a name. We need to enable the image scan settings. And we have right here our repo. This URL will help us to make or tag our images and then push it into the repo. So with this, the only thing we need is a new project. In this case, I'm using NodeJs, a simple Express server that will help me for this tutorial. I'm using a simple router. Here I have the home that is sending the index.html, and I have the empty path that is sending only I love Docker and Kubernetes. I'm using Node 12. I'm making a work there, copying the package JSON, installing all the dependencies, and I'm exposing the 3000 port. This port will match with this other port. So let's build our image. First of all, we need to log into our AWS ECR. For this, we need the region, that's all, and we need to use the Docker login. So we are going to use the login for our repo. In this case, we need the password for our account, and as you can see, I'm copying the URL and logging succeed. We are logging into our repo. So let's build our image. I have right here the Docker file. I have the app.js, and let's build it. If you don't know how to build an image, or if you don't know how to create an image, you can find another video that I explain all these things. I let you right here. Right now we have built our image, as you can see is right here. And let's now tag this image with the URL that AWS gives to us. So as you can see, we are using the last image we built. Now I need the whole URL to do this. That you have, and that's all. We have tagged our image. As you can see, I have this one that is another tag for the same image, right? So now we need only to push our image. And that's all. As you can see, it is pushing to our repo. It is pushing. And it's finished. So let's check it out. We can see right here, it is my image. So we have finished with this. So the next thing we need to do is to create our cluster. And for this, we are going to search Elastic Kubernetes Service in the console. We need to name it, and then we need to select a version of Kubernetes. In this case, I'm using this one, but you can use whatever you want. We need to create a specific role for our worker nodes and for our master node. So let's create an AWS role for Elastic Kubernetes Service. As you can see, is for the cluster. Next, then we need to assign some policies for this role. You need to have all this, that is the permissions to create and access and all that stuff to another resources in our account. Next thing, we need to name the role. In this case is for the master node, so you can put master node in the name. And now we need to create another role, but this one will be for the worker nodes. So let's create one. Let's create one for the worker nodes. As you can see, I'm only putting these two policies and another one for the container registry. This one registry read-only, and we have three policies. As you can see, we need to name it again, but this one is for the worker nodes. So we have these three, and let's continue. I created the two roles that I need to start working with Elastic Kubernetes services, and there you have. We are using the master for this one, and let's create. We are using a subnet. In this case, I'm using a subnet in US East 1B, and we are using the default VPC that AWS offered to us. We are going to set the cluster endpoint public, and we are let this one as it is, default. We are going to disable all the stuff. This is only for logging. And we are going to check summary of our cluster. Let's create it. It will take a little bit. Let's wait. Let's wait. It will take maybe 10 minutes. And let's refresh. There you have. After a few minutes, we have active our cluster. So let's check a little bit what it is. We have this with the node groups that we have. Right now we have 0 node groups. Then we have the target profiles. We have 0 target profiles. We have all the stuff about network, the subnets and all the VPCs. We have the add-ons, the authentication. We have the logging, all is disabled, the history of the updates, and the tags. So right now we have an empty cluster. As you can see, we have only the kube proxy and AWS node. Let's refresh again, and yeah, we have the core DNS. That's all we have. So we need to create some nodes right now, some worker nodes. So let's create some. We are going to the compute and add a node group. The next thing we need to do is to create a node group. First of all, we need to name it. So we are going to name it with something related to. And we are going to use the second role that we created, the node group or worker node role. Then we are not going to use the template because we don't have templates. And let's click next. Then we are going to create some VMs. This VMs is one for each worker node that we need. In this case, we are going to use the T3 micro. That is the free one. We are going to assign 5 gigas of disk. And this is important. This is the scaling configuration. Right now, I'm going to set all in 2, but you can manage this as you desire. So let's click. We are going to use the subnets that the VPC offered to us, and we are going to deselect this one. We don't need the SSH key right now. So we need to check all our configurations. It is done, it is done, it is done. So let's create the worker nodes. It will take a little bit too because they are going to create some instances. Okay, it is done, it is active. We can see all the node group right here, and we have two worker nodes. Here we have our worker nodes. Here we have our worker nodes. So we have our cluster with two worker nodes. Let's create our access to these worker nodes. As you can see, here we have the T3 micro, that is our two instances, and now we need to check our access. There you have, we have the node group and we have our VMs. This is only for 4 pods and it is on demand, T3 micro. We are using this architecture. We have the master node and we have two worker nodes. We have the authentication that we need to log for the kubectl CLI. So let's try with kubectl. We need to log into our cluster. So for this we need to use the region as usual, and we need to use the name of our cluster. Okay, that's all. So we are going to connect. As you can see, we have now the connection. We can use right now kubecontrol. kubectl is working. We can get a lot of things from here. So we have this connection right now. We have all set. So let's now make a YAML for this deployment. As you can see, this deploy.yaml is to make the deploy into our cluster. So it's very important, this YAML, because this YAML will work to deploy our project into our cluster. So we have the metadata, we have all the stuff that we need to match the name with the match labels. As you can see, we are using a name, an application. We have two replicas. We have a match label with the selector to match our application and to label this deploy to other or to the pods that are creating with this deploy. So we have the template and we have the specs of our container. As you can see, we are naming our container with this name and we are getting the image from this URL. This URL is the same URL as we created in our Elastic Container Registry. So let's search it. It's right here. We can open in another window and let's check it out. So copy your URL and paste it into the image that we have right there. So image pull policy is it will always pull the image from that URL. We are getting some limits. We have the request of CPU. This live proofness is important. Kubernetes needs to know that the application is alive, so we need to match the same port as we have in the Docker file. As you remember, we have 3000 right here, and 3000 right here too. We have these delays and the period. We need to check this path. This path, it is important. It is for Kubernetes to know that our application is alive. So we need to create this path, health check. You can name it wherever you want, but in this case, I'm naming it health check. So we need to create a function to only return an OK message. As you can see, I'm sending only a status, and the status is working. And we've done this other path is only to get the authors. The authors is me, and it's done. So right now we have the health check. So once we finish, remember we need to make the build. I forgot to do that in this video, but you need to make the build again to deploy our new image into the repo. Then we are going to create the deploy using the YAML that we just created. So we enter this line and it is now created. We can get all the information of our pods with the command kubectl get pods. They are running. As you remember, we created a deploy with a desire of 2 pods. So Kubernetes is controlling that. It's controlling how many pods are running. So we can delete the pod and you can see how it will start another one, because the desired state is to have 2 pods and no one. So let's check it out. As you can see, one is getting terminating and the other one is rising. So we have this deployment, and the replica set is creating the pod for us. As you can see, it is creating the container to get the desired state that I want. Right now we have again the 2 pods. As you can see, we have 2 pods running. Yeah. So the status is running of the 2 pods. We have only the service of Kubernetes. Check the deployment right there. We can check all the stuff that is running in our Kubernetes, and we have now running some pods through the worker nodes, and we have our container inside that pods. So we are running 2 instances of our project. Now we need to create a service. This service will work to have access to our pods or to our application from outside, right? So we need to create a service. In this case is a simple node port service, and we need only to set some information for this service. We need to set the API version. We need to set the kind, that is a service. Remember, the other one was a deploy. In this case, it's a service. We need to name it, and we need to match some labels to get the whole application with that labels, right? In this case, we are only using this configuration. As you can see, we have the type that is node port, we have the testing kube app, and we are using a TCP protocol with the port 3000. and the node port 372. And that's all we have. So now we have our service created. The next thing we need to do is to deploy it into our cluster. How we deploy this service into our cluster? By using the CLI kube control. Kubernetes has default ports. As you can see, it is arranged. So we are using one of that ports to expose our project. In this case, we have our pods. As you can see, we have 2 pods right now. And we have an application inside that pod, right? So we need a service to connect that application and to give access to all the clients that want to access to our service, right? So with this service, we are connecting our client to our application. So to deploy this service, we need to create a service like I'm doing, using -F to select a file, and it will take this file and will create the service with that port and with the exposed port. So let's create it. As you can see, it is created. Let's check it out. Control get all, and you can see we have our service. We have our node port service that is pointing to 3000. Now we need to enter to our EC2 instances that are our node group and node workers, and we need to create a security group for this one, right? We need to create a security group to expose our port to the internet. So if I access right now to that port, that is the one that I choose, I cannot have access to that one because I'm not exposing the port to the public. So let's create a security group and let's expose this port. As you can see, we need a custom TCP. The port range, it will be only the port that I choose, this port right here, and we are going to expose to all the IPs. It is a public network, yeah. So let's try it right now. And there you have. We are running right now our application. It is working. It is working fine. We have our pods running. We have our application running. As you can see, I can call my paths. So it is working fine. As you can see, I'm using one URL from one worker node, but I can use the other URL to access to our application too. I have 2 worker nodes, so I can access to our application from the 2 URLs. As you can see, we can access to our application. Next thing, we need to erase all. How do I erase all the deployments, all the services? By doing this. We can erase it one by one using the same command, and as you can see, we don't have the service. Let's try it out. It is not working because we don't have the service to access. So let's create it again and it will work. As you can see, it is created right now. Let's try it out. And it is right there. So it is working. And yeah, that's why we need the services. We have our 2 instances. So right now, we have only 2 pods. We can scale it by doing this. If I run this command, I can scale with another replica set, and it will create only the status that I want. In this case, you can see how Kubernetes service will erase all the stuff that I need and will finish the pods. So right now we are working only with one pod. As you can see, this pod is right now terminating and it is done. Yeah, so we can scale up too. We are going to use the same command but using the replicas for 2, and it is scale up. Let's check it out. And we have 2 pods right now. And to delete all this, we need to delete the deployment. If I only delete the pod, the only thing will happen is it will delete that pod, but the replica set will mount another one. So to delete all the stuff, we need to delete the deployment, and it is delete. As you can see, all the pods are terminating and all the stuff is terminating. We need to delete the service too. We can delete it by doing this, using the same YAML, and it is deleted. And there you have. We can change to one replica right here, and if I create it again, I will only have one pod. That is the power of Kubernetes. We are using this to make our application and our replicas as we want. Let's delete it again. It is deleted and it is done. There you have. We need to delete right here too because I don't need this. So let's delete the node group. And to do that, we need to delete it. We need to use the whole name for security. And it is done. It will take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to delete it. As you can see, the status is deleting. And when it is done, we can delete our cluster right there. So let's delete our cluster. There you have. Our 2 VMs are terminating because we don't need any more. So let's delete the cluster. Again, you need the whole name to delete it by security. And it is deleting. So it will take a little bit. And that's all. That's all for this tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn a lot. We can again erase the roles because we don't need it. So let's erase it. And it's done. We finished. As you can see, it is easy to use Elastic Kubernetes services. If you have any question, if you have anything that you want to know, you can put your comments in the space for the comments and I will respond. Right now I'm deleting all the stuff that I created, the Elastic Container Registry too. And I'm deleting my Docker images from my local. I can delete it by name or by image ID. In this case, it will delete it right there. And by image ID. And it's done. We don't have the images. So that's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos like this one, please comment below and have a great time. Bye bye.